Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I'm putting on my cybersecurity analyst hat today because we've got a seriously fascinating and frankly rapidly evolving situation to look at. We are going to assess the interconnected systemic risks going on between the US and China right now. And look, we're not just talking about microchips or trade tariffs anymore. We're looking at this massive, highly complex ecosystem where artificial intelligence algorithms, global finance, and even domestic labor markets are all colliding and feeding into one another.
To make sense of it all, we're going to break this down into 5 key threat vectors today: the AI Cold War curtain, the logic distillation exploit, military and diplomatic escalations, financial asymmetries, and finally, pretend-to-work labor dynamics.
All right, let's jump right into vector number 1, the AI Cold War curtain, and how we went from a commercial rivalry to straight-up resource restriction.
Now, to understand where we're at, we kind of have to trace how we got here. Think back to late 2022. OpenAI drops ChatGPT, and boom, it sparks this massive, wide-open commercial race. Money is just flowing everywhere, and tech enterprises in both nations are innovating out in the open. Fast forward a bit to early 2024, and the Chinese startup DeepSeek has its major moment. They release a highly capable, much cheaper open-source model that really starts closing the gap with the US leaders. But looking at where we are right now, that era of open, friendly competition, that's completely over. We have entered a highly aggressive phase dominated by national security posturing, accusations of IP extraction, and direct government interventions blocking corporate deals.
And you know, the real-world fallout from this is severe. It's actively disrupting the day-to-day operations of massive multinational tech firms. For instance, China recently stepped in and prohibited Meta from acquiring Manus, which is an AI firm based in Singapore, but with Chinese founders. And on the flip side, the U.S. Department of Justice is actively hunting down and prosecuting the underground smuggling of advanced NVIDIA servers into China. The U.S. Commerce Department is investigating companies using restricted American chips. There's even proposed legislation on the table right now that could hit individuals with up to 20 years in prison just for engaging with specific Chinese AI tech. The curtain hasn't just fallen, it's bolted shut. Which brings us right to Vector 2, the logic distillation exploit, and how actors are replicating proprietary AI logic.
Okay, let's dive into this because this is the highly technical core of the current dispute. What exactly is model distillation? Well, as a cybersecurity analyst, I look at this and see a brilliant, albeit concerning, extraction strategy. Basically, it's a process where an actor sends millions of targeted prompts to a super advanced proprietary large language model. But here's the kicker. They don't actually care about the answers. The real goal is to map the underlying decision-making patterns, the core reasoning, and the confidence levels of those US AI systems. It's essentially a way to siphon off the brain of an advanced model without having to spend the billions of dollars it takes to train it from scratch. The mechanics of how they pull off this modern digital extraction are wild, but incredibly precise. First, they set up these massive networks of proxy accounts and VPNs to completely camouflage where the traffic is coming from. Next, they just bombard the target US large language model with hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, of complex queries. Finally, they scrape and collect all those automated replies. They use that colossal data set to reverse engineer and actually map out the reasoning algorithm of the target. I mean, we're talking about industrial-scale data harvesting here, all designed to perfectly replicate proprietary AI logic.
Naturally, this practice has triggered some serious diplomatic friction. The White House has officially come out and accused state-backed actors of orchestrating, and I'm quoting here, industrial-scale campaigns to essentially siphon off the capabilities of American AI labs. From the U.S. perspective, this isn't just aggressive innovation. It's viewed as a direct national security threat and a highly targeted theft of intellectual property.
But we have to look at the whole picture to keep our threat assessment totally neutral. Beijing officials, they've vehemently denied all of this. They've officially called the U.S. claims entirely baseless and pushed back hard, characterizing the whole thing as a slanderous smear against the achievements of China's artificial intelligence industry. So regardless of whose side you lean toward, one thing is absolutely clear. The temperature in this digital arms race is hitting a boiling point.
Let's shift gears to vector number 3, military and diplomatic escalations. This is where AI enters the physical realm.
Sure, chatbots and intellectual property disputes are what dominate the news feeds, right? But the much more profound and, frankly, dangerous undercurrent here is the military application. There's real concern right now, reportedly raised by Beijing themselves, regarding the actual physical deployment of autonomous weapons. They specifically cited recent usages in the Middle East, notably in Iran. Because the terrifying reality is this:
Once AI logic is extracted and replicated, it doesn't take long for it to find its way into advanced, uncrewed physical weapon systems.
And this sets up a truly fascinating geopolitical disconnect. Down in the trenches, the national security apparatuses, the deep states in both nations, are quietly but very aggressively pushing for stricter controls, heavier sanctions, and tighter export restrictions. Yet, up on the public stage, we've got this high-stakes diplomatic summit coming up between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. And the stated goal there? Positive mood music and deal-making. It's wild. But if that summit actually goes well, it could potentially pave the way for a renewed, absolute must-have strategic dialogue specifically focused on controlling these autonomous weapons.
Moving right along to Vector 4, navigating financial asymmetries, offshore bonds and US dollar dominance.
Okay, to really grasp this financial vector, we need to quickly define what a dim sum bond actually is. Basically, these are offshore bonds denominated in Chinese currency, the RMB, but they are issued outside of mainland China, often in financial hubs like Hong Kong, and they're typically sold to foreign investors. It's essentially a very clever mechanism for China to internationalize its currency.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the deep irony in the basic economics. While the US government is actively accusing China of stealing AI secrets, one of the biggest symbols of American capitalism, Goldman Sachs, is out there eagerly issuing dim sum bonds. Why? Well, it's just math. A 10-year dim sum bond might carry a coupon of around 3%. But if Goldman tried to issue that exact same equivalent bond back in the United States right now, it would cost them anywhere from 5 to 7% because of our higher interest rates and inflation risks. So we're seeing this massive financial asymmetry that global banks are actively exploiting just to lower their borrowing costs.
Right now, this dim sum bond market is sitting at roughly $260 billion. Let's be clear, that is a drop in the bucket compared to the roughly $60 trillion US bond market. The US dollar absolutely still maintains an overwhelming global dominance in reserves and trade. However, analysts are projecting this dim sum market could just explode, reaching over $10 trillion by 2030, as investors hunt for stable, low-yield environments away from Western inflation. It's a slow, quiet drift, but it's pulling pieces of the financial system toward China's orbit.
Finally, we arrive at Vector 5, pretend to work labor dynamics. Let's look at the domestic vulnerabilities hiding under the tech boom.
Because for all the high-tech global power flexing going on, domestically, China is dealing with a severe strain on its job market. Looking at recent data, the youth unemployment rate for 16 to 24-year-olds is sitting at a staggering 16.9%. Traditional jobs, whether in manufacturing or the white-collar sector, are just shrinking, and it's leaving a massive generation of young people really struggling to find their footing.
And this incredible strain on the job market has birthed this truly unique and honestly kind of heartbreaking phenomenon, pretend-to-work offices. These are popping up in major cities from Shanghai to Shenzhen. They are literal workspaces where unemployed individuals pay a daily fee to go sit at a desk, maintain a morning routine, and basically simulate having a job. Now sure, some of these folks are freelancers or digital creators trying to adapt to the new AI economy, but many of them, they're simply there to avoid admitting to their families and peers that they've been laid off. For about $7 a day, a young person can rent a desk in one of these spaces. I know, it sounds absurd at first glance, but it is such a profound window into a culture where unemployment carries immense, crushing stigma and shame. These people are paying for structure, for routine, and frankly, they're paying for dignity. They wake up, they get dressed, they do the commute, and they send photos home to their parents to prove, hey look, I'm contributing to society, even if the whole thing is entirely staged.
Which brings us to the ultimate paradox of our assessment today. At the macro level, you have a nation projecting immense power, going toe-to-toe with the US, pouring trillions into global AI dominance, extracting algorithms, and expanding offshore finance. Yet at the micro level, underneath all of that cutting-edge supremacy, you have an entire generation grappling with severe structural unemployment, literally forced to cosplay working in a gig economy.
So what does this all mean? It leaves us with a pretty vital question to chew on. As this massive battle between the US and China for global AI and financial supremacy accelerates, are the true, deepest systemic risks the external geopolitical threats like algorithm extraction and trade sanctions? Or are the most dangerous vulnerabilities actually hiding quietly right there inside their own domestic labor markets? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the systems around you, and I'll catch you next time.